Welcome to the short conversation, introduction, Q&A about what is child and parent ego state contamination, and what are, questions about that you have about ego states and ego state decontamination process, and a little introduction about what the space that Ana Norambuena and I are going to deliver at the end of this, at the end of March. And so first, I actually, if you already come with questions, I would like to know, because I'll speak for a little bit. I'll introduce some distinctions, and I'll open for more questions. But if you already have questions right now, then I would love to hear. And so I'll already use these questions to introduce. Does anyone come with any urgent things about the ego state and the decontamination?
Yes, I have a question. It's connected with some of the experiments that I'm doing. You shared a little bit in the village group already. I want to hear more this distinction of why the child ego state, for example, is not useful, or the parent ego state to work with, like giving a name, as the gremlin, for example. Like the gremlin is this energy that I give it a name to work with, and the parent ego state and the child ego state, the research is not working to give it a name. And I'm curious to listen more about that distinction.
Thank you, Gabriela. I will talk a little bit about that. Okay. Do you have a question, Jay?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Well, so first I start with saying that the ego state research started with transactional analysis. So I just wanted to honor the roots of some of the work that that Possibility Man is doing, and is doing new research, maybe that is kind of goes hand in hand with transactional analysis work. I don't do at all transactional analysis work, and so but we have used some of the distinctions that have been developed in that work, and developed towards the context of radical responsibility. And so the distinctions that we've borrowed have been exactly to distinguishing states, ego states. And so a lot of people, and this is starting to answer your question, Gabriela, is that a lot of people in psychology use this kind of way of speaking about the inner child. And inner child, it's a very specific work. It's another lineage. It's another completely different context than possibility management. And so an ego state, as defined in possibility management, is a set of beliefs, behaviors, orientations, attitudes, and thoughts that you can say that they're kind of a replication. For example, for child ego state, they replicate the behaviors, thoughts, ideas, orientations of when we were a child. And could be thoughts, behaviors, attitudes, orientations, actions that come from an orientation that is mimicking our parents, or our external authority figures, our carers or teachers. Okay. But an ego state is not it's not a thing. It's kind of an emotional state. I sometimes use this comparison with the state of shock, because in English and in other languages we have this expression, I'm in a state of shock. And we know it's a temporary emotional state. And this emotional state, in the state of shock, there's certain ways of looking at life when we're in a state of shock. You know, it's not the same thing when we are in a state of grace or celebration, right? So we think differently in a state of shock than we think when we're in a state of grace or in a state of ecstatic celebration. Yeah? And the way that we tend to think when we're in this emotional state, energetic and emotional state that is we call child ego state, it really it brings back the memories. It's as if we act pretending that we're children again. And with a parent, we act pretending that we are our parents or our carers or our external authority figures. And we do this unconsciously. And so an ego state is first and foremost a state. So it's not a thing. We don't have a real child inside of us. We don't. We have our body, our energetic body, our physical body, our emotional body, our intellectual body, our energetic body. We have these interfaces that we use to interact with the world. We have our being and these interfaces, the different bodies that we use to interact with the world. We do not have a child in there, okay? And so this is why it is not useful in possibility management, the work of authentically growing up and become an adult, become aligned with your mental age, your psychic age, what your body is designed to align you to do the authentic adulthood initiations. It is not useful to consider that you have really a child inside of you and it's like hidden on your left arm or whatever. It's because then what I see that people do with the inner child, and it doesn't have to be this way, but it is what I've observed most, is that then people use, when they personify, when it's not just giving it a name, but they talk about their child ego state as if it's something that they have inside of them and that they have to take care of, and they have to nourish the child ego state as if it was a real child that it wasn't there. And what I see a consequence of this is that people then have their ego state, which is a survival state. It's an emotional survival state. It's a survival strategy. They have that survival strategy leading their lives. And so in the work of possibility management is to grow up authentically and to heal these strategies, so that we don't have these strategies running our lives. You have your being centered, grounded in adult ego state, which is also a state. And you can make choices and choosing options from a lot of possibilities that you have from adult ego state that you don't when you're in child ego state. Okay, so this is one of the traps that I see with giving a name, but most important, not just giving a name, but relating to the child ego state as if it's a real child that we have inside of us. Okay, this is all about healing things in the past. Okay, all of these orientations, all of these behaviors, all of these states were born in the past with emotions that don't belong in the present, belong in the past. And the decontamination work is meant to separate. This is why we call it decontaminate. We separate the layers of the energetic, mainly energetic, but also emotional, physical, mental. We separate them from the adult ego state that only exists in the present, separate them and put them back in the past, put them back where they belong, so that we can have enough space and it be present, be space, be present, be available. Okay. And so again, ego state is first and foremost a temporary thing, a temporary state. It is not permanent. It does not exist in the present. It is the only way that it exists in the present is when we talk about contamination. And people have two ways of being in that ego state. Two ways. One, I call it unconsciously slipping into an ego state. And I say unconsciously slipping is when this example that is very common in expand the box trainings, which is you're talking with a friend in a cafe and suddenly their phone rings and it's the police or it's the lawyer or it's the court and they're speaking with you with a certain voice, with a certain kind of demeanor, attitude, their posture is a certain way. And then they see that the phone is from this kind of external authority figure, and they change their way of speaking. Suddenly they speak more adult-like, or suddenly they have a completely different voice. And this is when people unconsciously slip into kind of fully into a certain ego state. And then when they're done with that interaction, they go back to a different ego state, a different state. And it might not be that they come back to adult. It might not be that they were doing adult with you in the cafe. But this is what we talk about when we talk about unconsciously slipping into an ego state. And everybody does this many, many times a day. Okay. It's a way that we found it's also a survival way to interact with the world, which is, to speak with a person as if we're their parent when we're not, or to speak with a person as if we're their child when we're not, or to react as a gremlin. So we put this identity in us, and we interact with other people in the world from this orientation. Okay. Then the other way of being in an ego state, wait a sec, I'm just gonna let in Anna. The other way of entering this, of interacting with the world through this ego state, is by contamination. And so a contamination would mean that usually people don't recognize. They don't recognize that they're contaminated unless they have clear feedback from others. The way that it looks to most people is, no, I'm really doing adult. I'm really I'm asking, I'm taking the time, I even thought about it. I was really intentional and very conscious about it. I'm really talking to this person as adult. So for the person, it really looks adult, but actually how it lands in other people lands in a different way, because the communication and the interaction is crossed. It's like the wires cross. And most people who have contamination, they report misunderstandings. For example, with child contamination, most people report that they're not really heard. They raise their hands or their voice, and they're never chosen first to speak, for example, or they ask something in a big group and nobody answers. So that it lands as this kind of invisibility, a lack of power, totally disempowered communication and interaction with the world. Whereas, for example, in contamination of the parent ego state, comes across to other people in the rooms and the interactions as this tightness, like, gosh, why am I being spoken to this way? And a lot of people react, And so really to get that you have, because this is completely invisible for the person who is contaminated, you rely on having a team, a village that is evolutionary, that is committed to, to your authentic self, your authentic being unfolding in the world without this extra foam, this extra foam of self-importance as the parent, or this extra foam of disempowerment, this kind of like, oh, this poor me. Okay. And so it's really difficult to find out if you're contaminated unless you have this feedback. So ego state, so far, ego state, I just gave the distinction of what is an ego state. It's temporary. We don't have a child inside, we don't have a parent inside of us. It is a temporary state that we slip into or we have it contaminated. And we call it ego. So because I'm explaining what state is, we call it ego because we identify with, we think it's us. We think this is me speaking like that. That's how I speak to my boyfriend. I use baby words. Or this is how I speak to dogs. Hey, buddy, blah, 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 blah. And this is the real me. Okay. And it's not. But we pretend that we are disempowered. Unconsciously pretend that we disempower when we slip into child ego state. And we pretend that we are the authority when we slip into the parent state. Anna, thank you for coming. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. So hello everyone. So it is what I want to include is the process of contamination happens when it is part of your regular behavior. So the ego state itself is also determined by the time. A state has a beginning and an end. And in the contamination of your adult ego state, those behaviors are part of your regular life. And this is what makes it so tricky also to identify, because they are already camouflaged in that what you call your adulthood.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna.
And to the parent, I want to also mention this from inside. Yeah, you spoke about the tightness.
Mm-hmm.
And the tightness is made mostly by those rules that you internalize and in your life, and you think this is how life should be. This is how I should be as a mother. This is how I should be as a sister, as a friend, and so on. So all this and that's why is the word tightness so good, because it does make a tight system structure with those internal rules in you.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to bring, just to complete the question of Gabriela, because we're not going to talk about gremlin contamination here, but in possibility management, we have a different relationship with gremlin. So gremlin has a name and everything. And so Gabriela, you asked me to, like, why do we not give a name to the child ego state? So first of all, we do not give a name to gremlin. We do not give a name to gremlin. Gremlin already has a name, and you discover it through an authentic initiation in a training with a certified trainer. Okay, so you are not the person giving it a name. That's a big distinction. And the gremlin is different because one thing is gremlin ego state, which is a state, a temporary state, which is just like the child ego state. It's like you slip into, you pretend that you're a gremlin, that this is how I am. I'm exploding, or I'm mischievously manipulating, or I'm making a haha joke, or using sexual energy to manipulate things. You can slip into gremlin ego state, but you have a gremlin that is present in the moment. So an ego state means that you are in an emotional state, because only adult ego state, so parent, child, gremlin, and demon are all emotional states, emotions from the past or from the future or from other people, not or reactive states. They are not states of feeling feelings. They're states of feeling emotions. But gremlin exists in the present. Gremlin is a facet of your being. Your being exists in the present. Your emotions exist in the, it are coming from the past, have origin in the past or in other people. But your gremlin is something that exists in the present. And it has a name, and it's right here, right now with you. And so it's a completely different thing than a gremlin ego state. Gremlin ego state is something that you identify. I am my gremlin. I'm the one responding to this. And then there's also contamination, which has to do with like unaset, with the everyday interactions with the world. So it's a completely different thing. Do you get it? Ego state, parent child, demon has to do with a reactive, and gremlin ego state has to do with a reactive state. And gremlin is a part of being that can be used consciously, can be here. It has nothing to do with ego state. Any questions so far?
Is this clear, Gabriela? Because you had a question.
Yes, it's clear. Thank you.
I found also personally that it's really it is necessary to, or personally, it helped me a lot to face my gremlin, to externalize this force in order to actually be able to meet that force in me. And so it is a different pathway than the ego state.
Yeah, we call that gremlin transformation. That path.
And this transformation about facing the gremlin and going through the process of learning, how this force in you works, how this force in you feeds, and what the force in you is committed to, and after having this transformation is so different than an ego state, which is a momentum. It's a momentum. And what I want to add to this time state is this: in this state, when I am in my child ego state, I would then connect to certain thoughts, to certain resources. I will have a certain language. I will have a certain behavior in my physical body. Yeah, and so it is really like, it's almost like put a costume on. Yeah, and then the costume is gone. You take then maybe the parent, and with the parent you have access to different thoughts, different languages, different behaviors, and this is how it goes. Yeah, so and the gremlin, the force is alive in you. It belongs to your being.
It's not a costume. Exactly.
Yeah, it's not a costume. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have a question. I get fully the the state thing about child and parent and also gremlin. I thought up to now that demon ego state, that demons are an entity. So how is that a state?
I can say that the demon ego state is still an emotional state, and it's one of the states that is most limiting in terms of what you have resource, like what you have options to choose from. We call them vampire entities, the thought forms that we believe. There's certain thought forms, there's certain sentences, there's some trigger sentences that once we say it in our heads and we believe them, our whole energy goes out. Gosh, I'm really a loser. And it's not something that came from, that's not what our parents used to call us, or it's nothing to do with external authority figures. It's some sentences that we've developed, basically, and we call them vampire entities because they act as vampires. As soon as we say them, they suck our energy, and we are without our lifeblood, without our life energy. But we still get into this state. It's like a costume. We're losers. Yeah, there's nothing else to do. There's no energy. Yeah, there's no life in our lives. And so it's also an ego state. But like a costume, just the same thing. I'm not a radiant being. I'm not a possibilitator that could just shift my reality here right now, that could just start doing things. No, put the costume of I can't do anything and nothing's worth anything. And we go into that state. And so it's exactly the same, but the possibilities are even more limited, usually in those with those triggered sentences.
Yeah, and it takes a period of time that continuously you are in this state. And I had personally this one sentence, about no one wants to be with me. I need to do everything myself. And this, when this sentence came in, I took over. It's like the sentence is the costume. Yeah. When I put this sentence as a costume, then my whole system just reorientate to this one sentence. Yeah. And in the moment, then it is, as the life force. What does it mean when we say the life force is gone from you? Is that there is no fuel for actions for creation. It is this state of, you stay in bed like this, and nothing makes sense, and maybe you function with the minimum, what needs to happen, and then suddenly something happens that you are out of it, and you cannot really find out what happened. But it's almost like when the tick is full with blood and just falls because cannot eat anymore. The same thing happens with those trigger sentences. They come, they suck your blood, your life force, and then they fall off. And in this moment you wake up and say, oh, now I'm feeling better. So this is the demon ego state.
And
is clearer for you, Ingrid?
Pardon me?
It's clearer for you?
It's clearer. I can't say it's clear. It feels to me like I add a question. I thought in a way that demons could exist in the present, but when I hear you, I have the impression they don't exist in the present.
So it's a different thing. When we're saying ego state, when we're talking about ego state, it's the costume. We are going to this state, emotional state, we put on the costume, and we react to life. In the case of demon, what we call demon ego state is, we without life, everything's miserable. It's like something is consuming our life energy. Okay. And then there are people that work with entities, the energetic blocks or entities, or something that is a kind of parasite in people's lives. So I don't work with that. There's people, particularly in other traditions and lineages, that work with people that have some kind of, that invite these. They could be thought forms that invite these entities that do exist in the present to suck their life, to change, to make them more reactive. So we've learned that also a lot of people have some survival strategies where they accepted the help of some kind of entity. And so this is not it. This is what we're talking about is ego state, where it's always accessible. And in a way, it's the same thing as we're letting in this idea or this belief or this sentence. We're still, it's the same as entities. We're letting in these sentences, and we're letting our life be sucked dry.
Yeah.
And the process of slipping out of that ego state, unless you want to wait for the tick to fall off, is to close. There's a process called closing the cafe, Spark 135, which is online. But if you have a lot of these, then you need to start examining also your gremlin, also your survival strategies. What is it that I have such easefulness to invite these these things to eat my
Mhm.
energy. Okay, but that's a process. That's a healing process and a transformational process of you taking responsibility for what you allow in your life, for the energetic parasites, and it could be people also. It could be circumstances, situations that you allow yourself to be in. So that's usually how to deal with the demon ego state.
Yeah, I get it much more now. Thank you.
And the trigger sentences are from the past. So this is this is not happening now. Like these are things from the past coming in the now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
We had one in the chat.
That's right. Hi, Mango. Hi, I'm new to possibility management, so this is all completely new to me, but I totally get it. My question is, how does the decontamination part work? Anna, would you say a little bit?
Yeah, we are referring child and parent. We are concentrating on that, right? It is accurate?
Yes, yes.
Right. Okay. So what are we? Also, there are two things we want to develop. One is that you develop your own instrument to detect behaviors that enmesh in your adult ego state. Yeah, so you need to develop train your eyes, train your ears, train your nose to find out those kind of behaviors, so you can, in time, you can start to work also with your own detector. And because this is so invisible at the beginning, then as a coach is necessary. And the other side that we are going to develop is to, by recognizing those behaviors, for example, say in a child ego state behavior, yeah, by recognizing those behaviors, we concentrate on one behavior and find out the doorways of this behavior for transformation to happen. Yeah, in the child ego state, in my own experience, I have, we find emotional healing processes that need to be done parallel to the decontamination. Yeah, but it is about to really take this behavior and put it by side there where the child ego state belongs. So say, for example, I get a tantrum, yeah, and I identify my tantrum, with the coach as a behavior. So I will go then in my life, because the decontamination doesn't happen in the coaching session. The decontamination happens between the sessions. This is when you go into your life as a research, you change identity from Mango into a researcher, yeah, and you find this you work with this one behavior, you took it by side, you put it back into the child ego state, and this is the interesting part, then you see what happens. Then you see what is alive in you if you don't have this behavior. And when we talk about child ego state, we talk about unmet needs. The unmet needs are in the front. This is the fuel of the child ego state. Mm-hmm. Something in the past that is not fulfilled is, you cannot let it be in the past. You are bringing this in the now, yeah, and projecting this into your present moment. Some of those things are so relevant, so significant, they are woven into adult ego state. So you don't know that these behaviors are manifesting in your everyday life. Mm-hmm. So we do, it is fine work. Yeah, it is fine work because we go behavior by behavior. And they have also some kind of chain reaction. So sometimes you work with a certain set of behaviors, and then there are other behaviors they are developing, transforming with those. Yeah. And so it is about when you push this, when you take it out, this behavior, the child behavior, then you will have a different reference point. And maybe for the first time in your life, you will have a reference point about your adult ego state. And at the beginning, maybe just for short period of time. But this period of time this is what we want to grow into, yeah? to this be your reference point, and by you investigating and researching about yourself, you are identifying more and more layers where your adult ego state has woven this kind of contamination. So we work close with each other. For you work with a coach. So forget to do this yourself; it will not work. Just for the level of of instrument that you need to develop first. Yeah. So we work very close at the beginning. We work weekly, and after a while of working together, you will need more time for your own research. So you maybe will go then fortnightly, and then one time every three weeks, and so on. Yeah, but it's a long period of time. We say decontamination practice go between 1 and 2 years, up to 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this is important. It's important to really, I think the key of the decontamination is consistency.
And there's it is not separate from the initiation works and transformational work. So the work of decontamination needs to be accompanied by emotional healing processes. So to get space from the emotions from the past, for example, from the things that were happening, all the incomplete communication that you didn't process when you were a child, all of this needs to be healed. And so then there's we wouldn't do this in the decontamination sessions, but you would be working with a 3-cell, like a group of 2 other people that would be radically committed to each other's healing and transformation and decontamination. And that you would use, you would in that 3-cell go through the emotional healing processes. Or, we have the bigger village, the bigger healing village of possibility management, where people are exchanging emotional healing processes and all of that. So emotional healing process would still need to happen, and initiation processes would still need to happen. And particularly, not for all ego states, but particularly for the child ego state, because that's what most possibility laboratories are really about, owning the underworld and growing up, authentically growing up. So it has to be the path of decontamination is interwoven with an evolutionary path already of initiations and transformation. One more thing that I also want to add is that we work with child and parent because they have a dynamic. They have a very particular dynamic. So a lot of the people who have contamination of parent, a very, very common, we've seen this with a lot of clients, is that behind that first layer of this parent kind of confidence or arrogant or critical attitude towards themselves or towards others, if we started pulling up that layer and see what's underneath it, very often underneath it is like the scared child behavior. And so that's why, okay, I'm just going to cover it with confidence, cover it with self-importance. And so that's why we work very much with this dynamic. It's not that we sometimes pull one layer, and if it's the next part is not adult, we need to pull that one out. Okay, what is underneath that child ego state, scared child? And maybe there's a kind of a square millimeter of space of reality, of real, I just don't know. And it feels scary, or it feels, there's some fragility here. And like Anna was saying, just to get to really ground that reference point of experience of the adult ego state without any kind of preconceptions of what adult is. Because that's what the parent does. The parent puts rules. This is what a parent should look like, should talk like, should feel like. And so in the decontamination, in the calls, we would help you find the actual experience of being adult, which is shattering most, if not all of the preconceptions about it.
Mango. How clear is it for you right now? Is this helpful for you? Mango, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, sorry, it's Ina. Actually,
Hi.
Mango Magic is my project.
Mango Magic,
Um,
well, Ina, oh, I see Mango Magic, Ina. Ina, so is this
um,
helpful for you? It is.
yeah, this is
Sure.
very, very interesting. And yeah, I think I need a lot of that because I actually also was living with my parents and my child. And so there was a lot of like mixed up dynamics between like who are the parents and who are the children and what's going on here. So this is all very fascinating for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be learning about that and would like to work on that contamination stuff.
Great, thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
I have a question too. So I am in addiction from not eating enough. And so my impulse is that I need this decontamination to be more in my own power. And I feel fear if it's the right time or I should like to wait a little bit. Yeah, maybe you have some impulse for me.
Christine, are you speaking about an anorexic behavior?
I don't know exactly. Sometimes I'm not eating enough, and I know that I change it, and I'm on the way. And again and again are some situations that I say later, 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 later. I will eat later, and I see that they'll change something, and I see that when I'm in this child ego state, I don't eat enough. So
it is depending. I don't think there is like one answer to your question.
yes.
But I had this as a child behavior. I had this as well. I did not push it away, but I forgot because
Yes.
as a child is also, why would you like waste your time eating if you can play? I mean, just playing is much satisfying than eat. So I also forgot the eating. It was one of my child behavior. I did not have many. So this was like a really big one, or not drinking. The both things I had. And so if this is connected to the child behavior itself, go for it. This is the step. Now, what I will make a distinction if it's your no eating is more connected to control, which it will be a gremlin move. It will be a gremlin behavior. Yeah. And then I will start with something different. Yeah. So I think maybe like general to identify the part of your child ego state, you can work on it, then it will be a call will be necessary. Yeah, to be more precise. Because when the control part kicks in, then it needs also gremlin transformation. Have you done gremlin transformation, Christina?
Yes, chapter 0 by Vera.
Yeah, just recently.
Yeah, so it will be then going to chapter 1, which is about the diet. Yeah, and this will freak out this part of the gremlin who is having control about the food, for example. You will have there the possibility to transform more specifically, like more focus. So I will distinguish these two parts, and they can be one topic, the food, with two different ego states. Yeah. And food is one, I think, I don't know who doesn't have something about food. Yeah. So food is a very common field for the ego state to unfold.
in addition to that, Christina, there's also an aspect of child ego state contamination that a lot of people have, which is disconnecting from their bodies, to not really to have no connection to the needs of rest, of moving, of because a lot of people, it's one of the unmet child needs. Also, they don't learn the skill of listening to their body, and so part of the work that would accompany, so that would be apart from the decontamination, but would need to be there as part of the healing and transformation, would be to really to build an inner structure in you, which what I'm scanning is also that is important to really establish a kind of, okay, how do I feed my physical body? How do I nourish and take care of my physical body? What practices do I need to develop to start listening to my physical body needs? What practices do I need to do, or how do I feed or nourish my emotional body? How do I take care of that part? How do I take care of an energetic body? How do I take care of the mental body? And so it's not to be neurotic or perfect, because part of also being an adult is saying, yes, my body is tired and I really want to do this, so I'm going to do this even though my body is tired. But it's because we know how to take care of the physical body, and we are taking responsibility to choose to do it a different way. So it's not health in the sense of we have to always take care of every single body in the same perfect way. But that's something that people that have child ego state contamination, they miss this connection and responsibility for their bodies. And it's super important for integration of any transformational work that you do. If you don't have this space, then you go through transformational processes and it just it doesn't really ground. So whatever, even if you're not doing decontamination, really have this space going on. Yeah, really build the space. So does that apply to you? Do you have this, how are you feeding? How are you nourishing how are you relating to your bodies? Do you have a clear relationship?
Actually,
Yes.
yeah, to all of these four bodies, you mean?
Yes.
Yes.
So
I know which body needs something, and it's more to get in the mood to feed it. So often I see, okay, my emotional body needs something, or my energetic body, and I let the time go to get in a move.
Right. Yeah. Then that would be, that's part of also Gremlin transformation, and would be also emotional healing processes. About there might be some unconscious beliefs or thoughtware that you would have about how to take care of it, or how much value this need has, or all of these things. So continue doing the chapter 0, the Gremlin transformation. Even if you do one-to-one coaching, it can be really great to really go deep. I think it's really the best is like one-to-one coaching, so you can go deep and to start addressing each of these behaviors and taking more responsibility for them. Yeah. And that would prepare you. All of that is matrix building. It's really preparation for the work of decontamination. Yeah. Is that clear, Christina?
Yes and no.
What is it not clear?
Actually, I have the question if it's better to do at first the Gremlin work more, or if I can go both ways.
Both ways would mean to start the decontamination of the child ego state now?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
I would
Please.
say I would say definitely yes. Definitely you can start with the decontamination. And, you know, like you said at the beginning, it is good to do this now or wait. And I think wait is the worst option. Because in
And my
waiting,
impulse is to start.
yeah, nothing changes. But, you know, like I think that you will profit of what you said. You will benefit of a decontamination, and doesn't mean that the transformation of your gremlin doesn't can happen parallel. Of course, like go for it. Both things are so useful. It's both things that you need. You know, your being needs both transformations in order to come forward.
Yes.
Yeah, because
Thank
if also if you do a child decontamination without gremlin transformation, the part of the gremlin will start blocking it.
Yeah.
And so it's really, especially with the child, it's totally different for the gremlin decontamination, but especially with the child, it's so much that you can already start doing. And of
Yes,
course,
my
labs and everything.
Yeah, I just come from a lab. And my impulse is that I need this child decontamination to get in chapter 1 to another time. At first I have to decontamination, and then I can go forward, and in this time I just be with my gremlin and to know more about him.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Keep going. Yep. We have time for one more question.
Yeah, my question is, if we do chapter 0 and then this, do you mean like you can do this decontamination, like what you guys are going to be offering, or do you mean like one-on-one coaching can happen like after chapter 0 and then, I don't know, chapter 1 simultaneously with your training?
Well, first it depends on the people. A lot of people have different gremlins that are taking over their lives. So some people, in the case of Christina, when we scanned, I don't know about Anna scanned, but when I scanned, it was that there's a lot of work that is ready to be done now, you know, and that would mean one-on-ones. That's the real work of the decontamination. Now, the space that Anna and I are offering is, in a way, it's to prepare people for that work. So we already are going to focus on observing, on identifying these parts of ourselves, because really the decontamination work is a real one-to-one coaching process. Yeah. And so I would invite you to be there. So you don't have to be in chapter 1 or chapter 2 to come to the space of the group space that we're holding, because it's all preparation work. But it could be that in that group setting that you get feedback from us saying, okay, so this is in your next step, and your next step is not to do one-to-one coaching right now. It could be doing gremlin transformation, or it could be do a whole week of intense EHP, so that you have space from all these emotions from the past. So, but that would be a great way to assess, okay, what is your next step, so that you can prepare. Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, we have time for one more question.
I have a follow-up to the answer you gave to my question, because I was looking through my notes. You said, I recognize some of the child behaviors that I revert to in emotional situations. Like I just cry and I feel helpless and I feel like disempowered, right? What you were saying earlier. So when you said you put that behavior aside, how do you do that part?
Well, that would be explained in the coaching session, and it would have to, and this has a context of really feeling. It's even feeling having sensation of your energetic body and your emotional body, and to literally pull that behavior out aside with your hands. And it's allowed, so you would need to also feel your feelings, feel your anger, be able to feel your sadness, be able to feel your fear consciously, so that you can sense that layer that is not from the right now, and to pull it aside. And so this process, we would teach it in we would just hold space in a one-to-one session. And also what I'm hearing is that would maybe, have you ever done a rage club, Ina?
No, not yet.
So this would be a great next step for you, would be to start feeling that anger consciously, and use it to bring, because all of this work in decontamination and transformation will need your conscious feelings. It will need that you have access to feeling, and to the use of what feelings can do, and also so that you can feel your emotions, so you can go through emotional healing processes. Because the work that we do has a lot to do with using these emotions to heal. And so we don't heal so much by talking or analyzing or none of that. We really go and re-experience the feelings and the emotions, and get clarity from that, and complete what was not completed. And so that would be, I would say that would be a great next step for you, to do a rage club, so that you can, when you're angry, you feel angry, and instead of crying, you know. And when you're sad, you go for the sadness. There's a lot of women, not all, but most women, they learn that anger is not okay, and so instead of being angry and say, I'm angry, this is not okay with me, please stop, they cry. And so that would be a first level, and it already acts as a kind of decontamination anyway, because you're getting responsible for your what you want and what's not okay for you. Yeah.
Okay,
And it's a great
thanks.
introduction to possibility management too. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ina. Okay. We have our 1 hour. Thank you, everybody,
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank you for coming.
I will
Thank
publish
you.
this recording, and I will also publish the next. We'll have a second 1 hour Q&A that would be more addressed to European times, and maybe there will be new questions there. And so I'll publish both recordings, so you both have access. And if you've given me your email address, then I'm going to send it to you directly. Okay. Super.
Wonderful. Okay, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
Vera.
Mm,
Thank you, Anna.
Bye.
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 Vera, can you stay 2 minutes?